Hey everyone, welcome to Past Lives and the Divine. I'm Gina, the host of this podcast, and today I'm going to tell you all about my upcoming podcast break, and then we're going to dive into some listener questions. Some highlights from the questions and the answers that you'll be listening to have to do with how I read tarot, how I feel about old souls, soulmates, twin flames, the fact that the earth may or may not be a school, and some souls might be more evolved than other souls, so I get into my beliefs about that. I also talk about a healing room that clients of mine have accessed, and I have heard from other clients about them accessing this healing room, and then also some students and just conversations in kinship. So everything I know about people accessing a healing room while they're dreaming. I also go into things like how tall I am, my favorite food, and how I feel about setting boundaries, all of those things, and more. So stay tuned for that, because that is how this episode is going to end. But before we get into that, I'll let you know I am taking a break from this podcast. A break from the podcast is what I need. I think it's so fun to hear your responses about the podcast, your questions about the podcast. And as a one-woman show over here, I gotta say, I am so burned out on listening to myself talk. It's like the biggest reason why I'm taking a break from the podcast. So this summer, I'm going to be focusing on the hypnotic arts training. We have a cohort currently going on. Students, they're about halfway through, or closer to the end now than halfway, but they're still working through that. After each cohort of students, Sarah Leverett and I just kind of take every little tweak that we want to make to the training, whether it's an idea that we have or feedback from students. And then we will be launching and beginning another cohort of students midsummer-ish is what we're thinking. So if you're interested in the hypnotic arts, you can always go to the show notes. So if you click on the show notes link in this page, and you'll be able to click a link to get to the hypnotic arts training, or you can always just go to the hypnoticartscoalition.com. Okay, so I'll be working on hypnotic arts. Like I said, I'll also be continuing to work in my membership group called Kinship. So you can learn all about kinship if you go to pastlivesandthedivine.com and then click on work with me and click on Kinship. So we meet twice a month. And I also supply some bonus stuff, and seems like I'm always chatting in WhatsApp. So it's just going to be a really fun time to really sink into the creativity of even starting to get ideas of what I want Kinship to look like next year, and what's the podcast going to look like when it comes back. I think I'm going to go back to Fridays as my publishing day. It just feels right. I don't know why. So I think I'm going to be doing that. But really the summer for me is to take the gas off a little bit, do the things I need to do, and then really sink into kind of relaxing, rejuvenating. And then with that, I always get so many ideas of how to move forward, new things to bring to the podcast, or, tweaks we want to take to the hypnotic arts training, or what I want to do in Kinship next year. So it's always a time of relaxation and slowing down. And with that, I always get more and more ideas. I kind of think that's a human thing, but it is for sure a Gina thing. So that's why I'm taking a break. I am not going to see clients this summer. So my last clients I finish up with the month of May, and I'll be opening up my schedule again for sessions in September, October, November, December, and I will be sending that link out kind of July-ish, maybe toward the end of July. So if you want a session with me and you're not on my email list, go to pastlivesandthedivine.com, click on subscribe, enter your email list, and then you will be notified when my schedule opens. So even though my schedule does book out, I always like to remind people that at least right now, it takes a couple weeks, sometimes even 2 or 3 weeks for it to book out. So as long as you're on my email list, if you click that link and schedule your session once you get the email saying that my session schedule is open, you should be able to get a session, no problem. Now, before we get into the Q&A or the Ask Me Anything that I'm going to be sharing with you, I'll give you a little context of it. So a little bonus gift within Kinship. Just this last month, I offered up an Ask Me Anything round. So Kinship members could submit any question they wanted. And then I sat down at the end of April and recorded like a 2-hour podcast essentially of me responding to their questions. And so while some of that is kind of, I always share way more with my Kinship group, and then some questions were just really specific to either hypnosis work or specific to things that we've covered in Kinship. So what I did from that 2-hour recording was I took the questions that I think you all, not being in Kinship, not being in the hypnotic arts training, would think would be interesting. So feel free to listen to that, and just to let you know that, I am fully aware that my point of view is completely different from other people. So if you listen to my answers to some of the questions and you feel differently, I want you to know that you don't have to feel angry at me about that. You don't have to feel weird about that with yourself. It's just a difference between us. And I talk a little bit about like evolution of my beliefs and thoughts within the answers to those questions, but I just really wanted to put that out there. I think we're just in a weird time, and humans feel like if I disagree with you, then I must hate you. And I think that that's a super toxic, dysfunctional way to go about creating love and connection in this world. And so, because I'm answering questions and sharing a lot of my beliefs and views that I don't think always come through on the podcast, just simply because, I don't know. Well, maybe they do, but not so blatantly. But anyway, I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy this episode or any other episode, I'd be so grateful to you if you shared a specific episode with a friend who you think might like it. You've heard me say it before. I think that's a really great way in. If you feel like, I want to have more of these conversations, I think this friend might be into it, send them an episode that you really liked. Send them an episode that you think they might like, and then have the conversation. It's my experience that people are way more open to this stuff than we believe, especially when we feel isolated in it. So just want to offer that up to you. And also, if you never share and you just want to listen to this for yourself and keep it special, I'm all about that too. I'm just glad you're here. All right, everybody, gather around the fire for this recording of some questions and answers. All right, next question. I find your view of the tarot cards expansive and empowering. It seems different than any interpretation I've heard or learned in 20 years or so that I've been working with tarot. I'm intrigued to know how you got into tarot, how you learned it, if you had a teacher, self-taught, perhaps it's coming from another life experience. How do you go about tapping into it? What feels to me like a broader, universal, almost magical interpretation of the cards? Oh, that feels like such a compliment. I love that. Okay, so if I had, first I'll point to a teacher. The greatest teacher for me with tarot has been Repetition in Time and Lindsay Mack. So while I don't always agree with every single thing Lindsay Mack says, I really love just like the way she goes about reading tarot. To me, it does. It seems like the old ideas, but like with a kind of a spiritual upgrade in some way. It's just way more inclusive. It's way more life and self-centered, which feels very empowering to me. I have to just say over and over, like Lindsay Mack, her podcast is called Tarot for the Wild Soul. And yeah, I just really dig how she just does tarot, teaches tarot. So I not only listen to her podcast, but I've taken a few of her courses and learned there. And it's been cool. I've been following her for, I don't know. I don't know how long. I want to say like 7 years, but that seems like a really long time. So maybe like more like 5 years or something. But I first of all, have I had past life experiences doing this? Yeah, absolutely. That feels like true for sure. Growing up, I was always intrigued by the cards when I would hear people talk about oracle cards or angel cards or tarot cards. I was always intrigued by it, but growing up Catholic, there was always this like, when someone says oracle cards or angel cards, it's like in my mind they're glittering, and then the tarot cards, there's like a little shadow around it. Like I don't know if that's common, but to me, it was like a real difference there. And I still felt drawn to tarot. And I got an angel deck. It was a Kyle Gray angel deck, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. And liked it. But I just felt like I could never get a read from it. Like I would be like, what does this picture mean? I don't know. And so I'd have to read the guidebook, and I don't know if it's a stupid ego thing or what, but I just feel like, why am I reading the guidebook? Like, shouldn't I be able to get something from this card? And so I think that's why with tarot too, I was drawn to that, because there's beautiful cards and beautiful art on all of these different decks, and it doesn't matter what the picture is. Like I personally have my own framework for what the court cards mean, what the suits mean, what the number cards mean, what the major arcana mean. And so to me, it's almost like I can relax into that knowledge and then just enjoy the artwork. And then if the artwork informs me, cool. I guess is kind of how I do that. I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, I got my first tarot deck. I believe it was like 2014 or maybe 13 or 15. So I just kind of played with it. And honestly, sometimes months would go by and I wouldn't even think of it. And then I would think, oh, I'm going to do that again. And then a number of years ago, I think in 2018 or 2019, I started working more kind of witchy, like choosing the solstices to be my own personal like high holidays. Growing up Catholic, like Christmas just never felt right. Like it just seems hijacked by something. It just doesn't feel right. I love the ambiance and the leading up to it. And anyway, so in searching for that, I was like, I'm going to do the solstices. Those are my high holidays. And so I always do a little fire, even if it is just a candle, but preferably like a bonfire, but I always do a little fire. And then to make it special, like one of the things I thought was cool would be to like pull 2 cards. Like the energy card and then like the commenting card on that energy for the next 6 months or so, or till the next solstice. And that really, really rooted me into a practice with tarot where I was picking it up twice a year solidly. And then it was like around that time when I was planning what I was going to do. And after I had done it, it's like the window of time where I would play with my cards would just get bigger and bigger. And then pretty soon I was like going through like months and months where I would pull 1 card a day and journal about it. And just like, what does this card mean to me? Or even journal about like what that card felt like after I pulled it and it was for the rest of the week. Was that true? So I actually do a lot of reflecting too. That's part of my solstice ritual is I pull 2 cards and I look at them and it's like, oh, cool. What does that mean? And then I go back and I look at my 2 cards from the previous solstice and I read like my interpretation of those cards and what I believed the energy meant and what I wanted to do with it. And it was so cool to 6 months later look back and be like, whoa, I was dead on, as we so often are, And yeah, it was just really, really cool to be able to like anchor it in with the solstices, and then it just kind of grew and spread from there. Yeah, big learning for me with the tarot comes in reflecting. When I pull a card, if I'm reading the energy, then to circle back in a few days or a few months or whatever it is, the reflection on it really helps me to kind of get a flavor of like how it feels in my life. Like, how is this energy showing up in my life? And then I think that helps me when I'm reading for other people, because I can kind of give examples of like, here's what this means to me. And then someone can be like, oh, sometimes it just takes a real life example to like bring down the etheric message into a way that makes sense, or a way where we feel like, oh, okay, now this makes sense to me, or, oh, yes, now this resonates. So reflection has been huge too. Our next question. I have a question around your opinion or resonances with the ideas of soul types or ages. For example, do you believe some souls are very old and others are younger? What do you think of the idea that we're working through a system to graduate from having to reincarnate, or is it always our choice? I'm interested in your perspectives and theories, having facilitated so many PLRs. Yeah, man. It's good for me to circle back to this question every now and then. And it changes. It for sure changes. Right now, I think it's that all of that is bullshit. The idea that some souls are wiser than other souls, and some souls are, graduated, and some souls are just new, and then all the, adult supremacy that we put on just being older, but then we treat our elder people like fucking shit. Okay, so first, before I really dive into this, I just want to say that I think right now I probably have a pretty jaded point of view, because I just have gone through the typical midlife crisis stuff, and of like, I just kind of woke up and was like, look at all this effort I'm putting into these relationships and all of these things, and none of them return it back to me. Like, it doesn't matter if they say they cared, like, I'm not feeling it, and I need to feel it to be re-energized. And so there's nothing wrong with them. It's just, I don't get anything here. And it's harming me to continue to pump energy in this space. So I just want to say, like, I've had some big shifts in my life. Yeah, so I'm just kind of in this jaded space. So right away when I hear old soul, and even when I hear people talk about like soul contracts, and like meaning that means I need to work harder at this relationship, or that relationship's more important than this relationship, or soul mate, or twin flame, I just think that those things are a thing. They are a feeling. They are history. They are a relationship. But in terms of using them as hard, rigid rules about what that means for us today in this third dimension, it's just not true. Like, at this point, I kind of feel like if you have met your soulmate, get ready to have your whole fucking life burned down. Again, I'm like kind of in this jaded space. But I think that when we focus on those things, we miss the beauty of even the most simple relationships in this world. And I am very much speaking from an aspirational, hopeful point of view. Like, I don't see it. I know it's there. But that is something that I've learned from my clients, for sure. Of like the simplicity of life and the beauty of it, and the connection and the belonging that is really at the heart of every desire that we have. Another thing I'll say is just this idea of an old soul, I think is usually, at least this is my background. So I really think, from my perspective, an old soul is something that we usually give that label to a kid or to a very young adult. I don't know. I've never heard anybody call someone who's middle-aged an old soul. So maybe we use that term differently. But when I think of old soul, people are labeling that to a kid. And people used to say that to me. Oh, you're like an old soul. And I think what we're really seeing is someone who's incredibly sensitive. And I think that to truly be like in the essence of an infant, a child, adolescence, an adult, to truly be in that is annoying to adults. And so when we encounter a kid who's sensitive enough, maybe they're traumatized too, but even just a sensitive kid can see all of the things at play. And it is sad when kids need to learn adult lessons. Sometimes it happens. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm not saying you're bad if that happened to you or that happened to your kid. I'm just saying, I think that's what we're really seeing. That's my jaded point of view right now. And I'm like laughing at myself because I feel like even in an hour, I'm gonna be like, oh my God, these people probably think you're like the worst human. But that's what I think. I don't think that, souls, I think time doesn't exist like we believe it does. And so to say something is older or younger or higher or lower, like on the evolution scale, to me just doesn't feel right. And so, because like the lively, creative, free, boisterous energy of a young person is sometimes, I think, difficult for all of us suppressed adults to deal with. And so, when we experience a kid who's calm and aware and acting like an adult, and then when they're in front of us, we notice because it's like, hey, you're like an adult. You're so easy to be around. So, I mean, again, you know where I'm at in my life right now. But I do wonder sometimes of like when we put these labels on kids, like what are we really seeing here? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I prefer to be in the presence of an old soul, in quotes, like I am someone who has a hard time being around the intense energy of a young human being. So I totally get that. And again, like I said before, like 8 billion people on the planet, this is my one life experience here. So I'm pretty sure I'm probably wrong, but that's how I see those things. I just think that hierarchy and order like that, I think we need that for a human brain. When we get out of this body and we don't need the brain to help, connect the soul and the body and the whole earth experience, I don't think we need such structure and then hierarchy and oftentimes patriarchy that often goes with people's interpretations of the other realms or the space between lives or the life between lives. So no, I think all of that is false. And when I read Michael Newton, it seems to me, I don't know, I'm assuming he is a Christian man because it seems it resonates with a lot of like the hierarchy, sometimes hypocrisy. These people are higher than these people are lowly. I hate all of that stuff. And so I don't agree with that. And the idea of Earth being a school, it's something that I used to really, really believe. And it's something that really made me feel good for a long time, living with that belief in my heart. And that's not true anymore for me. So is it a school? I think if you want it to be a school, it is. And I think if you don't, then it's not. And I don't think it needs to be or it shouldn't be. I think it really is that simple. I think that we are all one. We are the universe expressing and experiencing itself. So I, as an individual, can say, you know what I'm going to do with this ride, this experience, is I am simply going to enjoy it. I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to take the easy route and I'm going to do that. And I don't care what other people think. And that's great. Or I could be someone who's like, you know what? I'm in this life, this universe experiencing itself, and this round, I'm on this planet and this body. And what else am I going to do? I'm going to learn and grow because that feels really good to me right now. When I dig into my shadows and see the ugly stuff, when I process it, let it go, integrate it, whatever I need to do with it, I feel better. And so it's like, I'm going to do that. I think the whole point of incarnating on Earth is to have the experience. And if you want to learn, you can learn and grow. And if you don't want to learn, you don't have to. And you might make a plan to learn, shit goes sideways, and you decide not to for whatever reason. Like, it just is. None of it is good. None of it is bad. It just is. That's like saying when the wind blows this way, it's good, but when it goes that way, it's not. Well, the wind's always blowing, and it's like blowing in a fucking circle, really, you know? Like, I'm getting off on a whole tangent, but I I think if we want it to be lessons and school and all of that, it certainly can be. And again, coming from this idea of like we are all one and we are a part of the universe trying, like, not trying, but like successfully experiencing itself. And so if the experience is fascism, racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, and school shootings, like, that's the experience. No one's going to punish us. Living through it is a punishment. Like, I just think it is the experience. And so what I wish is that we would all try to create more heaven for ourselves on earth, if you use the term heaven, but just like more bliss, more peace, more joy, more pleasure for ourselves, while remembering we're all one. So if I hurt you, I'm hurting myself. Like, if you look at crime, like a big reason why people, become addicted or commit crimes is like they don't have resources. Whether it's emotional support or financial support, like, I don't think humans are really like that. I think that we create a world like that. And I think that we could create something else. Like, that's why I think when people are like, oh, I'm going on vacation, even if I'm like burned out and have to work the next 7 days, it still fucking lights me up that someone is going on vacation. And honestly, I think that if we created more of like a heavenly life for ourselves, we would be more generous and more loving with ourselves, because you have to be generous and loving with yourself to allow that. So receive that pleasure and then give it to other people. And that might be in financial donations, that might be with your time, that might be with your smile, whatever. It's like, if we could all just create that experience for ourselves. And some people might say, like, that's not good, but what about the people who would, like, indulge in their addiction and ruin their life again? That ain't heaven on earth. I don't think for anybody. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, like, true joy. Like, if I have flowers in my yard and I don't have financial worries, I am so much more kind to myself. And when I'm kind to myself and allow myself pleasure and allow myself to, really grind and work hard when I want to and take my foot off the gas and replenish when I need to, when I let myself do that, I'm going to let other people do that. And I work sometimes on a coaching basis with Kelly Smith. And she always thinks it's funny because she's like, you're the only person I know who's like, my goal is to work less. It's like a legit business goal. It's like, I always want to work less. Like, fuck more. No, absolutely not. And so I know that it's like kind of funny and seems subversive, but it's the life I want for everyone. Not that everyone wants to work less. That's not what I'm saying, but what I want for everyone is like whatever brings them joy and pleasure. It's like, it's such a great investment in a human. I mean, think about how you feel like after eating a good meal, you're well slept, you've maybe had a little physical activity. Like, you feel great. Now, put that next to you've been mentally beating yourself up, you sleep way less than you need to because your schedule's too full, you had an argument with someone and you haven't eaten all day. Like, we can clearly see the difference in a human when we invest in like nutrition, pleasure, replenishment. I don't know. I think that's how we invest in humans. And if we can make our own little heaven, even if it is just in the four walls we live within, I think that does more good than just good for us. I think that's really what we need. I wish more people would focus on that. But yeah, anytime, if that were to come up anytime, it always seems like people get political and it's like, well, what are you, insert whatever. And it's like, I don't know. But if anyone's being intentionally hurt or oppressed, I am not here for it. And if someone says they're in pain or being oppressed, I listen to their experience. That's their experience. Like, That's the most important part of this equation, not my denial of it. That is where I'm at today. And you know what? It might change tomorrow, and I'm sure it'll evolve. We've only just begun. I think I will live to 100, maybe even like 120. So I'm sure it'll grow and change. But that's what I think. And I sometimes think we project into that space in between. And that is my little hippy dippy, bleeding heart point of view of what's going on in the world. And our next question, what are your thoughts on going into a past life regression or divine guidance session with the intention to channel an enlightened being or extraterrestrial or anything else like guide, angel, fairy, etc.? I mean, instead of asking questions, having the intention to channel their wisdom and any messages they want to share or want us to know at this time. Curious if this could work. Is it safe? I think it is safe, and I can only really speak to if you have the intention to be grounded, protected, connected, and you show up, in your power, and you're not verbally or in your mind agreeing to taking on anything or opening up any sort of like malevolent energy or any even mischievous energy. Sometimes that's not bad. It can just be a fucking waste of time on a planet where we're obsessed with time. But I think it is safe. I know that some people have like physical symptoms of like exhaustion or just feeling really run down, like after channeling a lot. I do believe that clients channel anytime I ask a spirit guide a question and the client listens for it and tells me what that answer is, to me, that's channeling. Like you're taking their message and you're bringing it down into the third dimension in a space that we can all read it or hear it or see it or whatever. So yeah, is it safe? I think we do it way more than we think. And the idea of like going in there just simply to channel, I think as humans, I'll say this, it's my human experience that I have needs and desires, even when I'm disconnected from them. And so I think that when we're showing up and navigating the unseen realms, my idea of the best protection is a human who knows they're in charge and they know what they want and they're not going to be fucked around with, even by like a little mischievous energy. So with that, I would go in with the intention to channel something specific, like a benevolent fairy, or the angel I always see at the end of my bed, or this spirit guide who I know, or this ancestor, or whatever, and going in there with a little bit more intention. And then I bet everybody, doesn't everybody have a question, even if it is just like, are we ever going to be in peace? But you could totally do that. And I don't think it's unsafe. I think it's the best protection is showing up in your power. So connecting with the questions that client really has, or the intentions for connecting and channeling the wisdom. If there's like, an area of expertise you're looking for or something specific, even if it isn't just one specific question, kind of, yeah. So I would do that. Just make sure you're grounded, protected, connected, and show up in your power. And then let us know how it goes. Okay, we have our next question. It says, "Hi Gina, I've recently visited a healing center a few times in my dreams. I'm very curious to know if you've heard anything about this place. It's very spacious and bright with white walls decorated with weavings, high vaulted ceilings. The first time I had an appointment with a petite older woman with glasses and short hair. I brought along my mom in her hospital bed. The woman voiced my mom's feelings. She couldn't communicate at the time, and I think we were working on helping her feel safe to die. The next time I came to the same place alone and I had an appointment with a different person. He looked like Mr. Clean. I know he was trying to help, but I can't remember the specifics. Thanks." So to answer your question, yes, I've heard of that before. I have heard of like spacious and bright, white walls, high ceilings, and other details like you had mentioned, decorated with weavings and stuff. I haven't heard that. That's maybe personally how I would decorate it. I haven't heard that specifically, or I don't remember that, but I do hear that is very common, like the spacious and bright, the white walls, high vaulted ceilings, like however, and then anything else that's more detailed that someone shares might be a little bit different, but those are common things for sure, for sure. I was having a conversation with someone who leads people through the life between lives space. She's a part of the hypnotic arts training. And now I'm like doubting if this is who I was talking to, but I'm pretty sure it was her. I'm so sorry if it was someone else. Anyways, she helps lead people through that life between lives space. And she was talking about how she led a client to a space. The client spontaneously was guided to, I don't remember if she called it a healing room, but it was essentially a place where people would go to like heal or learn, but like learn/heal, I think. And as this person was, her client was, in this room, she said, and you're there too, to the facilitator, to the hypnotist. And she thought, wow, that's wild, because I have been there before, and has since thought like, oh, maybe she goes there and works when she's sleeping, kind of a thing. Maybe not every night, maybe not all night. Who knows how time works in that realm, especially when that realm intersects with this realm like that. But I believe there's a couple kinship members too who in their sleep have gone to places that are similar to what you're describing. And it's almost like, and actually I've heard a couple clients say that too, and it almost seems like it might be a phase in their life, like they're going to get healing, or it might be a phase in terms of like, this is a quote, kind of like project they're working on the other side, whether it's research or sharing their healing skills. But yeah, I have heard of it. That's really, really cool. And I don't know if your mom's on the other side or still earth side with us, but I hope that sounds like a really, really beautiful experience to be able to have with your mom. And, difficult, awful, bittersweet for sure. But wow, thanks so much for sharing that. Next question. In your experience, have you noticed logical/rational thinkers and dreamers/imaginative thinkers are much different under hypnosis? I think they can be very different under hypnosis, but the common experience for me is that if someone is like too logical, too analytical, like, why am I seeing this right away in a scene? It's like, you don't even know what you're seeing yet. Why are you analyzing it? That's really the only issue that I see kind of getting in the way on a regular basis. But once we move through that and I give them the hypnotic suggestions of like, we're not here to analyze right now. We don't need to know why that is. We just need to know that it is. What else are you aware of here? Or when you tune in with yourself, how do you feel about that situation? And it's really just kind of like hypnotically guiding them with your suggestions, with your questions. And I really believe everybody can do this. Humans are equipped with the equipment to do this. Naturally, effortlessly, automatically. We do it a couple times a day, on the way to and from sleep, if you're someone who sleeps, which I think most of us are. So everyone can do it. And sometimes there is a little hiccup, but I might get a real intuitive, imaginative, creative person, and they're so visual, and they get into a hypnotic trance and the visuals aren't there because their spirit guides or their higher self want them to work on their intuition of feeling, of knowing, trusting your knowing. That's one of the hardest things to do, I feel like sometimes. And so with that, it's like, in theory, it is going to be easier with someone who's creative, intuitive, imaginative. But really, we can all do it. And even if someone is analytical, they might have a few hiccups at the beginning or might need a little reminding to just focus and observe what comes to mind. But you might get someone who's like totally psychic. They get into hypnotic trance and they're used to being visual and their visuals aren't turned on because they're being pushed to, exercise their clairsentience and their clairaudience or whatever, any other kind of intuition. Okay, next question. How do you work through exhaustion since you're on your own healing journey and talk with so many people on their own healing journey? Yeah, it's a lot, honestly. I used to kind of beat myself up because I couldn't listen. Like, people would be like, have you heard of this spiritual podcast? And I'd be like, no. And part of that is because when I was building my hypnosis business, my wellness career, when I was building it, I was taking advice from everyone, and it confused me, it overwhelmed me, and it never worked. And in this business, in my hypnosis business, like 5 years ago when I started it, I was like, none of that fucking shit. Like, every decision is coming from me and my intuition. And part of that was really blocking out a lot of spiritual information coming in and how people were doing their businesses. And that's what worked for me personally. Some people do that and they get ideas for their own businesses and it works, and you just got to find what works for you. So I didn't listen to a lot of that because I wanted to keep, like, what I'm doing is just what I'm doing, and I'm going to try to figure out what this is, and then I'll branch out and start absorbing that information when it feels right. And even to this day, though, I don't listen to a lot of spiritual podcasts. I don't even read a lot of spiritual books anymore because I get so much of that working with my clients. I mean, what to me is better than like reading a book or listening to a podcast on past life regression is like just watching my clients and like leading them on their journey and listening to, you know, the discoveries and the understandings and the new perspectives and healing that they're having is really nourishing for me. But it's almost like I've had to shift and be like, when I listen to this, I have to almost think of it as like work time, because otherwise I work for hours a day, and then after I'm done with those tasks, I'm like, I need to think about something else. And so then I don't participate in those things. But I want to, because I like hearing that information. But it's like, it's there, I want to listen to it, but it takes me a long time to get to it because I have really noticed that, like, I do get burned out on it for sure. And I do get burned out on it. Like I said, with the past life regression sessions, like I really watch out for that for sure. Next question. I really admire your ability to set and hold boundaries. Do you have any advice for those, me, LOL, who really struggle with asking/accepting money and setting boundaries where healing work is involved? Hey babe, the lessons that I've gotten is that this whole universe is about energy. And if we're given and not getting anything in return, it makes a difference, whether we're conscious of it or not. Money is just money. It's fucking fun tickets. You can use it however you want. You want to buy food? Go for it. You want to buy a new car? Awesome. You want to buy new shoes? Yeah. You want to past life regression? Cool. Like, I think we need to, it's my understanding that when we have a difficult time accepting money for the work we're doing, we're having a difficult time receiving in general. It's the receiving that I struggled with when I had that feeling. And so here's what I did. It's one of the reasons why I don't exchange money with clients, because I forget to have that conversation. I don't know how to not have that conversation awkwardly. So that's why I went to an online scheduler. You want to schedule a session with me? You pay for it when you schedule it. And then neither of us has to even think about money or exchanges when we actually meet. It's all taken care of. And if they cancel before 24 hours before, I go in and refund their money. It's like such a low risk way to do things for me. So that is how I got over a little bit of that awkwardness at first. But again, it's like when we can even extract ourselves from worthiness and finances, from worthiness and any sort of external validation, we get the opportunity to receive and see like how much we are offering. And one thing is to think about is like all the money and all the time, even the podcasts you listen to for that are fun to listen to, all of the time and money you've put in to get to where you are in your service offering right now. I know how much you paid for the hypnotic arts training. I know how much fucking time that took. I know how much hypnosis you do outside of that. Being the client is like continuing education. That counts. So we need to look at things outside of money. Money is a part of the energetic exchange. But what are you giving? No, what are you bringing to the situation? What are you sharing or giving? And you need to get something back. And a written testimonial ain't shit. Because no matter what the website people tell you, most people are not spending a ton of time on your website, especially if you have a podcast, especially if you have an in-person business. People want you. They don't want to read on your website. So barter how you want, do it how you want. Setting boundaries is hard, but you know what's even harder than setting boundaries? Upholding those motherfuckers. Really release yourself from that external validation and instead see the value that you bring and be open to receiving. And if it's awkward to receive it in person, them handing you a check or their card, do it online or do it in a different way. I think, what people are buying from me is a 90-minute session. And so it makes sense to me that they would pay for it when they reserve that time. That's time on my schedule. They've reserved it. I'm not going to do anything but hang out with them those 2 hours. That means something. Everything I've been through, everything I've learned, everything I've done up until this point is part of the value I bring. And the same is true for you. Even like the hard shit you've gone through, you've come out on the other side and learned some things. You've got knowledge people want. We need to stop thinking about money as like the kingpin. It's part of the energetics of the entire world that we live in. And if we can stop the obsession with money, we can see that everything is an exchange. And I think that can be very helpful. And I also want to say, anyone who says money doesn't buy happiness has never been flat ass fucking broke, can't afford groceries, can't afford to keep the electricity on. Get your car repossessed. Like, if they had money, they would feel happier. Yes, money can help. Yes, money makes life easier, but it does not cure what really ails us, which is the shit in our mind. Yeah, I am adamant about that. And I would be very sparingly who you barter with, because I'm a jaded business owner. I've been officially in business since like 2008. And barters fall flat, barters blow in the wind, barters don't get finished, barters leaving us feeling resentful when they don't, confused when the communication isn't there. Barter sparingly. Even when someone goes, well, you're doing this class of mine and I want to do that class of yours, should we barter? No, I'll pay you and you pay me. Done, quick, boom, boom. You never have to worry about like, oh shit, I don't have time for that class now. Now what? Like, now what? I'm going to take it personally or feel bad that you gave me it for free and now you're not going to take advantage of your half. Like, I think we do ourselves a disservice when we really focus on money as like this end all be all, and I think we got to get good with receiving not only money, but love, pleasure, relaxation, all of it. And holding boundaries is fucking hard. I personally require, at this point in my life, a therapist to lean on. I've set boundaries and maintained boundaries without a therapist. Either way, self-compassion is huge for me. Like, really getting clear of like who I am and how much I love and trust myself, and showing up with my values in that conviction, knowing that I'm good with me, and whatever anyone else does, whether they want to pay me or not, has nothing to do with me and something to do with them. But that's just the exchange. There has to be an exchange. There has to be. And if there isn't an exchange, pretty soon you will feel that. And it might come up as burnout. It might be a, reignition of an old autoimmune thing. It might be a resentment. It might be depression. It might be you just quitting because it's too much. But yeah, work on it. And it's hard. But take that into your sessions when you swap sessions. Ask your spirit guides about it. Do a session about it. That's what I would recommend. Next question. How do you take your coffee? What's your favorite food? If you're able to meet absolutely anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be? How tall are you? All the things we don't get to know about each other since we dive so deep. And we're on the internet. I take my coffee black. If it's warm out, I like a nice black iced coffee. My favorite coffee is iced coffee from Dunn Brothers in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And every once in a while I'll get kind of fancy with a latte if I'm craving a little shug, a little sweet stuff. Favorite food? I wish I had a better answer, but to be honest, if at any moment I could be in the mood for a good chicken salad sandwich on a croissant, preferably with a little pickle on the side, maybe a little pickle mixed in. But I would say, over the years, that has been the thing that always gets me. If I were to meet absolutely anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be? My answer for this question sometimes I feel like comes up in an icebreaker where they're like, if you could have dinner with one other person. And to sound smart, I will say I would love to have dinner with Queen Elizabeth I. Just what's it like to be a woman in power in the 16th century, 17th century, whenever that was. Seems just like that'd be an interesting conversation. Hopefully she'd talk to me. So sometimes I say that, but right now in my heart, 100%, I would take a meeting with all the doggies that I've loved. Like the wiener dog I grew up with, her name was Pepsi. I got a wiener dog when I lived in college. His name was Winston. He only lived for 8 years. Around the same time, I got Lily, who was a wiener dog. And she passed away a little over 4 years ago. And then that's when we got Tula, and then we got and then we got Milton, and then we got Roxanne, within the 2 years after getting Tula. So I would for sure just be in a room with them. That's who I want to hang out with. I'm 5'5". That's how tall I am. 5'5". Yeah, that's what it is. I can't wait to see you in person, Steph, and anyone else coming to the retreat. There's still some spots open if you wanted to go. And then number 8, if you were to tell your teenage self anything, what would it be? Well, this has come up in my therapy. I would give her validation. For me, the way in is you're right. You're right. This sucks. You are right. It's not good to operate as if everyone hates you. It's not good to throw yourself under the bus to keep other people happy, but you're right. If you want to remain living in a house with a parent and have them buy you food, which is very nice, you have to do that. And that's what I wanted, and that worked for me. And then I would say, and when you get into college, go to therapy, because this is no way to go through life. That's what I would tell her right now. That's what comes to me. I would tell her, you're right, life is going to get so much better. And I would remind myself that while I'm working in therapy, to really remove myself from needing that external source of validation. I think as a human, we always appreciate it. We always like it. Maybe not always, maybe not for everyone, but that's my experience. But to rely heavily on it for my sense of worthiness or value is the wrong move for me personally. And that has been a painful waking up in the last couple of years. Really, really painful. And I can see that I adopted a lot of those beliefs and ways of being when I was a teenager, specifically when I was a teenager. And so I would encourage her to realize that's what she's doing, and then to do it as long as she needs to, and then to stop doing it. Because I love my life right now, so it's hard to say I regret anything, but I feel like I could have avoided a lot of pain right now. Oh, that is it. That is the end of this Ask Me Anything. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate this. This was super fun. Yeah. And just a reminder, like everything I say, I, like most people I'd imagine, have pretty strong beliefs and convictions. And if we don't share all of the same ones, I am not hating on you for it. I am not bothered by it. And if I am ever bothered by it, you can assure I am taking that hot potato of emotions and I am processing it for what it is, which is my reaction to the world. I do live in ways that I feel like would be good if we all engaged in those ways. And like I've said a few times, I am one person in 8 billion or however are on the planet, and one person in all of humanity's existence. So I don't know, if you disagree, that, the numbers are in that favor, and just take whatever feels good. Take whatever perspective or clarity or understanding that you felt like you absorbed. If it feels good, just take it with you, and everything else, just leave it. Bye, Ken.